Hello class, my name is Colin Wade if you don't know me, and for this critical rewriting assignment, I decided that I would try and do a mini video essay and see how that goes, And since we have 5 to 7 minutes, let's just jump right in. The book I chose to examine is Leadership and Authority in African Society by Simon Oldenburg, an anthropologist. In his book, Oldenburg uses his field research spanning from 1951 to 1953, as well as his visit in 1959 to 1960, to study the organizational forms of the Afikpo village group located in the southeastern region of Nigeria. This is a region largely consisting of the Igbo ethnic group. More on this later. It should be noted that the Igbo never had a centralized state, but what characterized them was the organization of around 200 separate village groups, with each of them having their own distinct name, ways of organizing, and a central market that all of them would have. A defining feature was horticulturalism, the art of garden cultivation and management, relying on yams, cassava, and palm oil the most, but also cultivating a wide array of other foods. Often, these foods would be brought to the centralized market for sale or trade. Quick location change, guys, don't mind me. Each village had their own local autonomy, primarily organizing by patrilineal descent and a respect for seniority, leading elders to be the leaders and decision makers of the village group. However, the Afikpo were a little different. They also included the matrilineal descent groupings as part of the village group's way of leading and administrating. This wasn't the end-all be-all though. Even outside the patrilineal line, sorry ladies, we're not there yet. Not sure if we're there fully now, but y'all let me know. Through high achievement, in and outside the village group, are able to make a name for themselves and eventually join the council of elders. Quote, "The elders hold ultimate control in most major patrilineage matters, and as such they are the locus of administration and politics in the compound. This group consists of adult males roughly over 55 years of age, who by their village age group membership are considered elders on the village level, not just in their compound. The general principle is that leadership is open to all adult men who would reach this age, except for Ohu or Osu, slaves and strangers living in the compound. There is usually no single head or chief among the elders. Rather, they rule by consensus, arriving at decisions slowly at meetings in the ancestral shrine house of the descent group. There are other important roles within the village group that don't have as much authority and decision-making power as the elders, but play a key role in how the elders operate and what decisions they ultimately decide to make. The first is the ancestral shrine priest, selected by a diviner and the elders. Is that pronounced diviner or am I tripping? He should be quiet and of good moral character because he is the intermediary between the living and the ancestors of the descent group. Should he anger the ancestors, it could cause harm to himself, the descent group, or anyone living on the village compound. My question to you guys, would anybody take this position? Because you had a bad day is my fault? You did something to anger the ancestors? Yeah, I don't think anyone's deciding to be in that position. The ancestors are important because they legitimize the authority of the elders, the ancestral priests, and the young men's executive grade, a group of young men arranged by age who do a lot of the administrating for the elders. Also, shout out to the Afikpo rain controller, the person who's in charge of controlling the amount of rainfall for each season for good harvest and good farming. Yeah, if that rain don't fall, the village after you, buddy, you're cooked. This is generally how power and authority was diffused among the village and village groups, up to and a little after decolonization. After decolonization, the Igbo will find themselves with a new set of problems. Unfortunately, ones that will lead to bloodshed and would never fully be solved. Part 2. After the 1960s and in the coming years, the village group would have to find new ways of organizing authority, leadership, and power in a new decolonial Nigeria and a federation of different Nigerian states. Oldenburg truly did his work at a very opportune moment. Originally, I wanted to compare the Figbo village group from then when he studied it and what's going on now. But the village group as Ottenberg knew it has mostly been forcibly assimilated today. And I want to discuss why that is. And to do that, I gotta talk about decolonization. I think this is the moment I should highlight Achille Mbembe's idea of the necropolitics. The idea of the ultimate expression of sovereignty really being the ability to choose who at the end of the day lives and who must die. And the coming events in decolonial Nigeria would exemplify this idea. Thanks to colonialism, around 300 or so distinct ethnic groups would be sharing a name and a country given by their colonial government. And they would need to find a way to either work together or at least not fight each other. The three largest of these 300 or so ethnic groups are the Fulani, the Yoruba, and the Igbo. The Fulani people in the northern region of Nigeria are Islamic, pastoralist, and nomadic group, and their highest authority is the Sultan. They also composed a large amount of the military. The Yoruba were the wealthiest of the groups, largely due to their central location being around Lagos, and they are typically led by opas, or monarchs of earned status and wealth. Then we have the Igbo, as we know, located in the southeastern region of Nigeria and usually democratically ran by the elders. And they had something that the Fulani and the Yoruba did not have and would want a lot of: oil. The Igbo people mostly inhabited the regions around the Niger Delta. This also meant that they lived in the spots where oil would be the most accessible. On October 1st, 1960, the Federation of Nigeria would gain its independence from Great Britain, appointing the founder of the Northern People's Congress, Sir Abubakar Tafawa Balewa, as Prime Minister and head of government. For a couple years, things would be alright, but eventually protests would break out, protesting poor wages and living conditions in and around Lagos in June 1964. The colonial vestiges of Britain would leave Nigeria with the goal of proving itself on the world stage and market, and politicians would resort to dirty tactics and corruption to ensure their spot for themselves. In the elections of 1964, with speculation of cheating and rigging the election, the Northern People's Congress won again and re-elected Prime Minister Balewa as head of government. This led to a sparking of violence all around the country, and specifically violence against the Igbo people in northern regions, who were killed in large amounts. Eventually, this would lead to a military coup d'etat in which major political figures and Prime Minister Balewa would be captured and executed. The coup would ultimately be suppressed, but not fully snuffed out, with the coup supporters eventually doing another coup and appointing Yakuba Gowon as head of the federal military. Gowon would do very little to stop the killing of Igbo in the northern region. In response, Lieutenant Colonel Odumegwu Ojukwu, military governor of the eastern region, wanted a return to a more loose federal structure and wanted a military for each specific region. Ojukwu and Gowon were said to have made this agreement with the Aburi Accord, but Gowon would later break this promise and see fit to draw up the borders with full access to the oil reserves of the Niger Delta. Oil at the time made up more than half of Nigeria's economic exports. Gowon would go on to become commander-in-chief and declare a state of emergency for Nigeria. Ojukwu, on the other hand, would declare independence for the new Republic of Biafra, and war would ensue. The war would go on for roughly 3 years, and the Biafran forces would continuously be pushed back into smaller and smaller territories. Biafra had limited artillery, land, resources, and most crucially, little support from the outside countries. Most countries a part of the UN either remained neutral or directly supported the federal military. The federal military support mostly came from the fact of companies like BP and Shell wanting to control and profit off the oil reserves in the Delta. After many battles and the death of around 2 million Igbo Biafrans, dying from starvation and malnutrition due to the lack of resources, Biafra surrendered. There was little done to integrate Igbo Biafrans back into society, and the oil reserves of the Niger Delta would go on to be exploited by the Nigerian government and global capitalism, as seen in the Sweet Crude. Mbembe's necropolitics envelops every aspect of this conflict. The Igbo people were in the way of Nigeria's money with oil exports, and because of this, they needed to be forcibly removed from their lands. No agreement, no peaceful treaties, just domination. The democratic way of organizing authority and power in the Afigbo village group had to be transformed under the leadership of Ojukwu and the threat of the federal government. When safety is not guaranteed, it must become priority. At the end of the day, what matters is that you're still breathing. These events to me highlight what I think is hard for a lot of us to admit. And that is, at the end of the day, what sovereignty and power is the ability to legitimize violence and choose who must suffer it, for whatever reason it might be.